Warning: the following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers and/or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Southern Fried Paranormal with Len Dorman featuring Bones. Catch us on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Facebook, Stream, and everywhere else you catch your podcasts. And of course, WLFD-DB.com. Now, from the backwoods of southeast Arkansas, right beside the Bayou Bartholomew, the longest bayou on the planet, broadcasting from downtown metropolitan Cane Creek Township, here is your host, Len Dorman.
All right, tonight we are featuring my good friend from Chicago, Dale Kazmarek. So before we get started, however, he's in the green room waiting, so we are ready to go. I will explain a couple of things. One, yes, I am broadcasting from Cane Creek Township and down here in Arkansas. I am about a half a mile from the Bartholomew Bayou. I actually got water on about three sides. Got Cane Creek right down the street. I got Cane Creek Lake about a mile away. So, yes, I'm almost completely surrounded by creeks, streams, bayous. And, yes, I'm down here in Backwoods, southeast Arkansas. And that's just a natural fact. That's where I am. I'm lucky enough to get fast enough internet to do this broadcast. And here we go. We're going to bring in a very important guest, as I said, as I've advertised. And here we go with Dale Kazmarek. And I'm going to got some important questions to ask him a little bit later on. But right now, we're going to listen to what he's been doing, what he's up to, and a little bit what he's done. Dale, welcome to Southern Fried Paranormal. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Len.
So, tell us a little bit about yourselves, because we may be a new audience here. Some people who don't know who you are, don't know what Ghost Research Society is all about. And if you could tell us a little bit of what you've done in the past and, what has Ghost Research Society done over the years?
Sure. I started back in the mid-1970s, actually, about 1975, in actually doing research in the Chicagoland area. So I'm entering my 47th year within next month, doing paranormal investigations. We started out basically as a group of like-minded individuals who just were interested in researching, investigating, and visiting haunted sites around the Chicagoland area. With myself and Martin B. Ricardo, who was the co-founder of what was then called the Ghost Trackers Club. As I mentioned, it was just a bunch of like-minded individuals who just got together to go across the Chicagoland area and the Midwest here to kind of search out different locations. And I worked as a research assistant for that group from 1975, from 1977, actually, when the group started. I started in 1975 as an independent, and the group was started in 1977. I worked as a research assistant pretty much for 5 years. And in 1982, we decided to change the name to Ghost Research Society, which is a bit more indicative of what we actually do, which is ghost research. And at that point, I was given the full run of the group. So we started with our own bylaws. We began to expand our field of investigating from not just the Chicagoland area to all across the country. In fact, I've been to not every state by any means. There'll be several states I will never get to, probably like Alaska and Hawaii for sure. But I've been to England and Wales on 2 different occasions. I was there in 1985 and also in 1988, checking out some of the most haunted locations in the UK, which was just an amazing experience. But we started here in the Chicagoland area and just kind of expanded. Now we do investigations pretty much year long. Back in 2009, I got laid off from my job. In fact, basically the company was kind of dissolved, so to speak. And they didn't want an old fart like me around anymore. So they kind of gave me the boot, and which is fine with me because I just decided to retire at age 56, and I've been investigating full time now since from 2009, which I was 56 years old, and that really got me to do a lot more what I wanted to do. Actually, expand, go to locations. In the past, when I was working, I was really kind of limited to just weekends and vacation time and personal days to do what I like to do, ghost research. I began doing full time back in 2009, and I'm having a ball. I'm just having a great time going out and without any monkey on my back, so to speak. I don't have to to worry about going back to work or anything like that. And so we just continued to research locations. I started my ghost tours in Chicago called Excursions into the Unknown Inc. in 1982. They're the longest running ghost tours in the Chicagoland area. We do them every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can also find that link on my website, ghostresearch.org. I also began about 30 years ago helping out people who wanted to have their videos, audio, and pictures kind of analyzed. My forte has always been in spirit photography. I've written 6 books, 2 on Chicago ghosts, Windy City Ghosts 1 and 2, a field guide to spirit photography, a spirit guide to ghost hunting techniques, 1 on spook lights called Illuminating the Darkness, the Mystery of Spook Lights, and also my latest book on the haunted highways and bridges, field guide to haunted highways and bridges. So about 30 years ago, I decided to kind of open up the doors for people to send me, initially coming through what we call today snail mail through the post office, of people sending me photographs in the mail, and then having to write back to them, putting a stamp on an envelope and sending it back to them pretty much, and then kind of expanding from there to what we call BBSs or bulletin board services, kind of modified chat rooms, and of course now we're in the World Wide Web. So basically we get instantaneous responses from people. People can send me their pictures. All I ask is they send me all the relevant information about the photograph that they can, which helps me to determine, at least through my expertise, in seeing literally probably thousands and thousands of photographs in 30 years, kind of give people an idea what they may have captured. So I'm just having a blast doing what I'm doing right now. Been on a umpteen different radio shows, TV shows, internet, newspaper articles. In fact, for your listeners, I will be on 2 Travel Channel episodes tomorrow, December the 3rd. You have to get up kind of early unless you want to set your DVR. It's on the Travel Channel at 7 o'clock a.m. That's Central Time, 7 o'clock a.m. Central Time, and 11 o'clock a.m. Central Time. The first episode is called Curses or Coincidences, which I'll be talking about the ghost of Flight 191 that crashed here in Chicago on May 25th, 1979. The second episode will be called Mysteries Made in the USA, and I think it's the better of the 2 episodes. I talk about the ghost of the White House and all the different reports that have happened from the very beginning, from John Adams and his wife, all the way up to present time, where people have experienced stuff. So I'm out there basically to do very serious research, to employ what I believe is some of the highest, most modern, high-tech equipment that's on the market that you can purchase. I have a little more than $14,000 worth of paranormal gear that I've collected over the years, and some of it, a lot of it I don't use, unfortunately. There's just so much of it now, but I try to stay abreast of all the new and updated devices, because we're really into the scientific end of the spectrum, not so much the psychic realm, but I mean that does play into it sometimes as well. And people will call them toys. I call them toys sometimes myself, but basically they're actually an extension of ourselves. People that build these pieces of equipment now for the express purpose of to locate and to track or to measure energies, cold spots, different frequencies that are beyond our capability of hearing, seeing, or feeling. And that's what we do now with our group, pretty much.
All right. One question I've got about what you just went through: where can people find these books that you were referring to?
They can find them if they go directly to my website, ghostresearch.org, and you pull up that site. On the right-hand corner, you'll actually see all the books lined up there. You can click on any of the books, and you can buy them directly, through me. And that way, you actually get a signed autographed copy. You can also find them if you go on Amazon.com, Borders.com, but they come directly from the manufacturer, so just minus my signature or my autograph. Also, if you go to that page at ghostresearch.org, directly in the center of the page, you'll see a link that says Ghost Research Society Press, which is my publishing company that I started back in 2004 with former member Jim Greatek. And we decided to put together a publishing company where people could publish their books free of charge. Never charge them a single penny for the publishing, for the ISBNs, anything like that. And we have about 19 titles that people can buy besides my books. So there's about 13 other titles by other authors that you can find on my website.
Now that is interesting to me personally, because I've actually had several people try to talk me into go ahead and writing down what I've done in the paranormal. So can you explain in 30 seconds or less what I would have to do to be published by you?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't been publishing too many books here recently, and I'll tell you the reason being not that I have about 4 or 5 manuscripts that people have sent me, but what happened about 5 or so years ago, I had some pretty expensive publishing software that unfortunately my hard drive crashed, my computer crashed, and I lost all that very expensive software. Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Audition, all these different photojournalist software. And I never went back to try to repurchase them, only because they're just so darn expensive. And the other reason, too, is you notice that so many people nowadays are going to Kindle and Nook and reading books on their phones rather than going into the hard copies. And I saw a dwindling amount of publishing publishers and books coming out of my publishing company that people were buying, partly due to many bookstores, major bookstores closing up. Places like Crocs and Brontanos and Borders and Walden Books and many of the huge names. They're gone. I mean, you can find a few of them here and there. You might find some smaller bookstores, some smaller companies of bookstores here, or some mom and pop stores. But for the most part, people just they'll search maybe for a book they're looking for on Google. It'll pop up, and people can usually order it, online through Borders or Amazon or things of that nature. Or I still carry a pretty large inventory of my books, which are basically print on demand, so they never go out of print pretty much. But from what I understand now, Amazon is actually allowing people to publish their own books free of charge, and you can actually do that on Amazon. All you really need to do pretty much is have something like Microsoft Word, which most people do, which I use for all my book, for the interior, the text, and just basically format it, to whatever size book you're going to do. And usually Amazon, in fact, the one I dealt with was Lightning Source, I still do. They actually have templates that actually tell you and show you exactly how to keep that in a parameter and keep the text from going and bleeding off the edge of the pages. You have margins, you have top and bottom, and side, left and right. And the same thing is true with Amazon. They do the same thing. They're very helpful. And I haven't yet decided whether or not I'm going to write any more books. I had enough material to write at least 3 more books right off the top of my head. And there was going to be another Windy City Ghost 3. There was going to be one possibly on my 45 plus years as an investigator, showing people how things have changed from when I first started out to what it looks like today. And maybe even another one, either on Civil War ghost or some other ideas I had been kicking around for a while. And then, of course, you need to kind of design your cover, which is usually pretty simple. If people have Microsoft Publisher or something like that, you can pretty much design a cover pretty easily. It doesn't take a lot of skill to do that. And again, once you submit the books, like when I submit them to Lightning Source, they will let you know if it's not just spot on, because they want to make sure that when they produce and print that book and you begin to sell it, that book is pristine. It's perfect. It looks perfect. It's beautiful. They're not going to produce a substandard book just to rush it through to get your money. And the same thing is at Amazon. As you know, Amazon is one of the largest retailers around. So they're again out there to make sure that people get a quality book.
I understand. Now, can you talk about some of the places you've been? Like maybe the scariest place you've ever been to and investigated, maybe one of the more interesting places you've been to, the most memorable. Can you cover a little bit of that for me, please?
Sure, absolutely. I've been to, I have been involved for 46 years. I've investigated almost 4,000 cases during that time. A lot of them have, there have been a lot of repeats and, redos and going back to the same places over and over again, which I consider another investigation, because basically you're going there again and you're starting up a new investigation, sometimes with even better equipment than you had the last time you were there. But I've traveled extensively around the country. There are several locations that really stick out as being very memorable, as far as not only being scary. Well, I won't say scary. Spooky would be the better term, okay. And also be very. It produces a lot of evidence as far as EVPs, visuals, still pictures, personal experiences, equipment fluctuations. Old South Pittsburgh Hospital in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, which is one of the places that I've been to about 5 or 6 times. And during the first at least 4 or 5 investigations we did there, you were able to actually spend the night inside the old hospital, sleeping in former patients' rooms. And that was just ideal, because what we would often do is we would rent it out for 2 nights. And it was only $75 per night, per person, which is really not bad at all. And because you were sleeping there, you saved yourself the cost of a motel for 2 nights. So that even it was even better for your budget. And we would just set up our gear, leave it set up all night, run it the very next day. And if we didn't get anything, we might, tweak it a little bit, maybe put this camera over here, move this camera to another floor, something of that nature. But we got such incredible evidence there of not only disembodied screams and voices that we heard, but we got intelligent responses on both the obelisk and also the ghost box when we were out there. We were using the obelisk in what I like to call phonetic mode, which actually allows spirits to form their own words by putting together vowels and consonants to form words, and then expanding that to put those words into sentences. And it uses a speech synthesizer inside there. They're produced by Digital Dowsing and Bill Chappell, who I had a chance to meet this past October at the Mid-South Convention in Louisville. Great guy, absolutely amazing guy. And we were we were there 1 year, and we were upstairs on the second floor in the nursery. Now, this hospital is kind of laid out really kind of strange because the surgical suites are up there. The different wards where you would put people that were maybe not in their right mind were also up there, not too far from where the nursery is located. So we were in the nursery and we heard screaming coming down the hallway, and we knew it was none of us. Most of us was actually in the nursery, and you know, my members just don't have a habit of screaming, you know, unless they really see something that really scares the bejesus out of them. So we went back the next year, and we had almost the same team, and we actually networked with Jeannie Chilton, who was from a group out in St. Louis called PREOM, Paranormal Research Investigators of Missouri. And she's actually was doing an EVP with us in that same nursery. And she asked the question, we heard you screaming last time we were here. Who was screaming out there in the hallway? And we got a very distinct full sentence come through that says, probably was Florence. And I go, whoa. I mean, a lot of people caught probably, but they didn't catch the rest of it. We went back, obviously, we record everything, and we listen to it with headphones, and it surely says probably was Florence. And we have gotten doors that have actually opened up against door stops that had jammed them in. And these are pretty heavy doors, but they were very heavy-duty door stops. And we're sitting in a hallway upstairs using a very early SLS camera. They call it the Connect system back then. It was before they were actually produced, I think, by Bill Chappell. And it sends out a series of invisible dots, much like a laser grid. It's only visible to night shot cameras. And if a figure comes in the way of that, it'll show up like a stick figure. Now, we were shooting this down the hallway. We were doing a session, and all of a sudden, this door starts moving up against my people sitting on the floor, and actually was pushing them a little bit. And they turned around, and they kind of freaked out a little bit. And they saw that the doorstop was still underneath the door, and it was still being pushed back against the doorstop, which I thought was pretty amazing. And we have gotten so many other things. One example, which is really kind of almost what I would call a residual haunt, is we were in the nurses' station, which is normally a good place for people to set up like a command center. And this is what we did. We had monitors there, and we just stringed the wires for the different cameras up and down the hallways. We were able to watch in real time what was going on different floors. So we had just got everything set up, and we were talking to the host. She was telling us a little bit about some of the stuff that goes on here. And we were right next to a set of elevators. And those elevators, they don't work anymore. So they are permanently locked down on the main floor, and the doors are sealed shut so people just don't fall down the elevator shaft. And suddenly we're talking, and all of a sudden you hear, ding, like the elevator's coming to that floor. And we look around, and she goes, that happens all the time. So it was like, that's more like a residual thing. I mean, the elevator wasn't moving, obviously, but it was something. How many times did that elevator actually move when there were people there? I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of times, or thousands of times you'd hear that chime indicating it had reached the floor. So that's one of my favorite places. We did so much experimentation. People can actually go to my website, ghostresearch.org, go under GRS investigations, and you can just scroll down all the different things that we've done. Not every single thing is there, obviously. I don't have 4,100 cases up on my website, but I'm slowly adding more and more as we go along. And everything's alphabetical, so it's real easy to find. But another one I thought was just as amazing if maybe not even more amazing, was Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia, a 256,000 square foot building. And we were there initially during our first visit with a public investigation. Now we had about 60 people, but there's 4 floors, so they broke them up to about 15 people per floor, which is very, very, very manageable. The guide would show us through each floor, tell us a little about the history of the hauntings, and they say, okay, you got about an hour and a half or something, knock yourself out, do whatever you want. And they would split up, and you would hardly find a single person because the floors are so big, and there was no contamination at all. And we heard so many things during our walkthrough. We heard and recorded 9 disembodied screams coming down the hallway, which we got on video that people can see. In fact, one of them, there was a couple that was actually spending their honeymoon as a thrill to get a little thrill shot here at this big giant building. And when they heard that scream, you'll actually see him kind of face the camera and say, "Oh, did you hear that?" And you see the kind of shock and kind of like disbelief in his eyes. And
Right.
we also heard there was an interesting encounter that we had upstairs on the 3rd floor. There's a closet up there that has a chair sitting in the closet. And we were told the story that the chair belongs to a ghost, belongs to a former patient who now has passed on and is maybe still hanging around there. And that patient, that ghost, if you will, doesn't want anybody sitting in that chair because it's his chair. It's his personal property. So we had one of our investigators kind of test the waters a little bit. So he sits down in the chair, and I turned the obelisk on. And you can hear this very clearly. Again, you go to Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum and you just scroll through the EVPs and you'll hear this. I didn't even ask a question. You'll hear dictionary mode, phonetic mode, and then it's right after that, it says, "You get right up." As soon as I had a chance to put together a sentence, it says, "You get right up." It was loud, it was clear, unmistakable. And I told that the researcher, "Did you hear that?" He said, "Yeah, but I'm still not getting up." But that kind of stuff was just absolutely crazy. I mean, I was there, it might have been the first time we were there. I'm trying to remember. It could have been the first time I was there. And I hear this story every time I go there. So I don't think it's something that's been made up by the people that are taking us through. There was a report of a former patient named Ruth, which happens to be my wife's name too, which is kind of crazy. It is said that Ruth, while she was alive, did not like anybody from the opposite sex. So if you were a doctor, an orderly, a patient, a visitor, doesn't care, even a male nurse, she didn't like you. She'd throw her food at you. She'd throw her TV tray at you. She'd throw utensils at you. She would cuss and swear at you. Why, we don't know. Because people were locked in there because many of them were unruly. They were insane, for lack of a better term, or they were mentally deranged in some way, sometimes even criminally insane. And so we were doing an EVP session down no more than 50 feet away from where Ruth used to sit and throw food at people. And I was there with 3 female investigators. And that's very important to remember because I was the only male investigator at that time. Suddenly, my whole right arm felt, actually my left arm, felt like it had went to sleep. You could actually feel goosebumps. You can see the hair standing up. People took pictures. Some of my team took pictures, and my hair standing straight up, only on one side. And the 3 females, they felt nothing at all. And why? Because they were females and not a male. Just about that time, you can see very clearly in the video, I go down the back of my leg because it felt like there was an ice cold hand that kind of grabbed my left butt cheek, literally, and just squeezed. And I just go, whoa, what the heck was that? You know? Now, again, being that I've been doing this for so very long, it didn't frighten me. In fact, I said, hey, bring it on. Let's see what else you got, you know? And all the other females, they're going around with equipment, with meters, with temperature probes, trying to do different temperature readings and stuff out there. And unfortunately, nobody was able to pick up anything at all. Yeah. And hold on just 1 second, Len.
All right. We'll pause for just a second while Dale's taking care of something. And Dale, oh, there you go.
Yeah, can you pause just for a second here? I'm sorry. Hold on just 1 second.
I was just talking. I'll go ahead and say something again. Go ahead and mute your mic. All right, now that we're back muted, we'll be back with Dale in just a second. He's got to take care of something coming up at the house. And in the meantime, I'll explain real quick what the difference between a real ghost is and a residual. A residual is something that just repeats. It's not intelligent. You're not going to be able to contact it. You're not going to be able to interact with it. It's just there. It's energy that's stored by either something in the room or the room itself or the building itself. And it tends to react at somewhat close to the same time, either every hour, every day, every week. It just depends from period, you know, who it is, what it is, and where it is. This stuff is it's almost random. It's hard to explain, hard to understand, and it's really hard to catch. But that's what a residual spirit is. It's something that's not interactive. It's something I've run into before, where you see the same flash, something walks through a room and walks back, and no matter what you do, stand in its way, or anything you say to it, it's not going to respond to anything you say or do. Now, intelligent haunting, you can say something, they will react. You can sometimes move, you can speak to them, get in their way, and sometimes they'll walk around you. Sometimes they'll walk right through you. But you can interact with an intelligent spirit. But when it's residual, you can't do anything with. Already back. I was just explaining the difference between a haunting and a residual, that you cannot really interact with a residual. But go ahead with your story, Dale.
Yeah, I believe what I was actually, and I'm sorry for having to go away for a second. It was something I had to take, unfortunately, and I didn't think they were going to call me back so quickly at the time. But I apologize to you and your listeners there.
It's fine.
But anyway, what we experienced there, what I experienced there, obviously was not a residual. This was an interactive ghost. This was something that was there at the time that was interacting with us. The females were not picking up any temperature fluctuations. They felt no drafts, no cold spots. And why? Because they were females, and I was the only male there. So we continued, and we continued with our Ovilus session. We had it in phonetic mode. And again, phonetic mode allows you to form their own words. It does not use the dictionary mode. It doesn't use the all the 4,000 somehow words that are in the dictionary. And I simply asked the question, do you want us to leave, or do you want me to leave? And one word came through: you, meaning me. So we left, not because I was scared, because very often when we do something, I'm sure you've come in this situation as well. Sometimes you feel that you're kind of crowding the spirit. You're kind of interfering with their area, their domain. And if they tell us to leave, we ask them, sometimes we'll say, do you want us to stay? Do you want us to go? Sometimes they'll say, please stay. Other times they'll say, get out. And we'll leave right then and there. Not because we're scared, because we're respecting the spirits, what they want. So, we went to different locations. There was another real quick story I'd like to tell you. We were in this is another true story that came from this this location. There are a number of further down in another section of the building is another bunch of isolation cells, and there was a gentleman who was there at one time, and he actually was killed by another inmate that were there, and they took advantage of this poor guy because he was deranged. He wasn't all there, and we were actually sitting there and the guy's name was Dean, by the way, and we were doing an EVP session right there. We were doing I believe it was an obelisk. It could have been a ghost box. I can't remember right offhand. It was one of the two, though. And we were kind of questioning what was going on and why did you guys do that and so forth and so on, if they were still hanging around. And we didn't get a direct response, so to speak, but we got kind of a comment that says, "That creep Dean." In other words, he's trying to say that, it's kind of like, saying that this guy was a creep, which he wasn't. Mm-hmm. But in their opinion, and even maybe in the afterlife, they believed that this guy was a creep, which he wasn't. He was just an innocent victim. So, and a lot of these cells, these isolation cells, people were put in there for hours and maybe days at a time. If that's not enough to drive you crazy, total isolation. Soundproof rooms, basically, padded rooms, no contact with any other prisoners. You sometimes don't even have anything, but it's a single light bulb over your head. That enough can drive you crazy. So, there are some interesting places that we've been to. I mean, it seems like we seem to get our best evidence from places such as prisons, state mental institutions, hospitals, and movie theaters. Those are the ones we seem to get the best evidence from. And if I had to pick the single one, I would say state mental hospitals. We seem to get more evidence out of those locations than anywhere else. Just think of what happened in those old mental hospitals, that started back in, say, the 1850s or 1860s. They had very, very, very barbaric means of treatment back then, which they said, which I totally may agree with or may not agree with, was kind of state of the art at the time. Frontal lobotomies, taking an ice pick and putting it up here and just tapping into there, trying to separate, some of the frontal lobe from your brain. They said it had a calming effect, but kind of left people like vegetables after that. Immersing them in ice cold baths of ice cold water, electroshock therapy, chaining them to the walls, chaining them to the beds, putting them in isolation and solitary confinement, and things of that nature. It's no wonder that places like Trans-Allegheny, Randolph County Infirmary, like dozens of other places we've been to are so haunted because, and the screams that we heard, the screams that I picked up and recorded and heard audibly with my own ears are probably disembodied voices from maybe a century ago of people still screaming because of what's being perpetrated on their bodies by either orderlies, doctors, nurses, or maybe in some cases other patients.
Let me ask you a question here. At some place like Trans-Allegheny, like you're talking about, could this be a combination active haunting, interactive haunting, and residual, and you're kind of picking up on both at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, most often what people, in my opinion, I think I'm uniquely qualified to answer that question because I've talked to so many, maybe tens of thousands of people. Most people, when they have an experience or they have something in their home that they believe to be a ghost or something of that nature, for the most part, most of that usually is residual. It's something that a person had died in their home. you know, and they, again, people die in homes all the time. Doesn't mean homes are all homes are haunted. It's the way you die. But people that die in their homes, they love their home. They lived in that, maybe that lived in their home all their life. Maybe it was handed down from generation to generation. And so when people hear sounds of doors opening and closing, footsteps going up and down the stairs, dishes rattling in the kitchen at like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, if they hear the TV set, the radio go up and down in volume or turn off and on, these might simply be, aspects of that person's life that they had when they were alive, and they're still doing it in the afterlife. Because in many cases, and I know you've come across this too in your research, that many spirits sometimes don't realize that they have passed on because of the way they died. Excuse me, very suddenly or very tragically. And Hollywood has done a real nice job in movies like Ghost with Patrick Swayze, Nicole Kidman and the others, Bruce Willis in Sixth Sense, White Noise or Shudder. All those people that portrayed ghosts in those motion pictures did not realize that they were dead until later on in the movie because of the way they died, suddenly or violently. And in some cases, that happens in a home. Maybe somebody gunned this person down. Maybe he was murdered. Maybe he simply fell down the stairs and he was never found for days and just died on the basement floor. And because of that, sometimes buildings tend to have spirits in them. And in many cases, they're residual. But, sometimes at the same locations, especially if it's a larger building, or a large hospital, places like that, you can have intelligent haunts go on at the same time. And where there's interaction between the living and the dead. In other words, you see the ghost sees you. There's recognition that both of you see each other and can interact with each other. Those are the ones that are most fascinating to me, because that kind of like, indicates to me that there is something beyond death's door, that we literally survive the death of the body, that our spirits, that our energies, whatever you want to call it, goes elsewhere, or maybe in some cases hangs around for a bit. Einstein said it very eloquently that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it simply changes form. There was also people like Thomas Edison, as you know, who tried to build a communication device. And if anybody could have built that, it would have been Thomas Edison. I mean, he had so many hundreds of patents, maybe thousands. And he just apparently didn't have enough time before he also died. I'm sure he would have been able to communicate with something, because he said something to the effect that our spirit and our energies, that is a measurable energy in our body. What happens when we die? Does it simply move on? Does it kind of coalesce into what's called light units? And people see that. Sometimes it's simply a ball of light, a streak, a shadow, a semi-transparent form, a full-bodied apparition. And those that encounter that or try to communicate, he said, well, we should be able to build such a machine that in all theory should be able to communicate and bridge the gap from this world to the other side. And I think if he would have had more time, we could be in a completely different ball game right about now. We would be holding two-way conversations with people from the other side. And I think we're on the right track, though, with a lot of these bright minds in the paranormal field. People like Bill Chappell, Gary Glacka. I think that's how you pronounce his name. If I'm murdering it, I'm sorry. And many other people who now, lesser known people, and I don't mean that in a bad term, that constantly are building new pieces and new devices for the express purpose of communicating and detecting spirits on the other side, or in some cases that are right in front of us and we can't see. And when I started out, I mean, I had to find devices that I could adapt for that. In fact, my very first EMF meter was a compass. You know, I mean, a compass, what happens? A compass points to true magnetic north, right? Unless it comes in contact with a very strong magnetic field, which may be invisible, and that needle would then deflect, you know, towards that very strong magnetic presence. And that could be a possibility. It could be an indication of a ghost. That's a very rudimentary EMF meter. But then things like, you know, cell sensors and ELF zone meters and K2s and magnetic field detectors 1s and Dr. Gauss meters, and the list goes on, of very early devices that really had other purposes for, they weren't ghost tools. They were used to detect higher than normal electromagnetic fields in your environment, which could be detrimental to you as a person, as a living person, because they can cause what's called EMF hypersensitivity. There can be the hallucinations, skin irritations. It can, you might think you're actually seeing something. A prime example of this, and again, you can see it on the website. I don't have a video of it, unfortunately, but I was going through the Region Theater in Allegan, Michigan, and we were doing a public investigation, but it was a small public investigation, so it was just maybe no more than 3 or 4 people in one area. Perfect for what we were doing. And I was going around with, at that time, I think it was a Mel meter. And I walked into this room, and I immediately got hit with a tremendous pounding headache. And I'm looking at my meter, and it's showing 232 milligauss. I mean, that's an incredible amount of EMF, electromagnetic fields that are in the environment that literally is pounding on your head. And as soon as I stepped out of the room, the meter went back to normal. And a few seconds later, maybe about a minute later, my headache went away. I walked back in that room, bam, I got overcome by that. And I often wonder if people that sometimes experience ghosts are simply experiencing high levels of EMF that can actually create those different types of environmental changes and also physiological changes on your body and also to your psyche that make you literally fearful. You get like a anxiety or what they call a fight or flight mode. Fight or flight. Right. I think I said that right. Fight or flight mode. And I've never come across that yet, hopefully. And I don't want to come across that, but I've come close to where I've had anxiety attacks that I could not explain. And one, very briefly, I'll tell you, when I was at Joplin, Missouri. I don't know if you've ever been out to see the Joplin Spook Light in Joplin, Missouri. It's an amazing phenomenon. It's literally out there almost every night from dusk till dawn. In recent years, it's been less and less seen, and I'm not quite sure. Sometimes ghosts kind of go through a dormant state, so we might be entering kind of a dormant period. But we came into an area where I actually walked into what John Keel, author of the Mothman Prophecies, called in his book on the Mothman Prophecies, a zone of fear. He experienced something like that, very similar, at the TNT factory in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966. He literally walked into an area where he immediately got fearful, anxiety. He's doing this, he's looking around. He takes a few steps back and it's gone. He does it a couple more times, does the same thing, comes back the next day, it's not there anymore. Now that happened to me at Joplin, Missouri, just before we had a very unique experience. We were looking down the road. Off the side of the road, we saw the light. It was tremendously bright. We had some very high-powered binoculars. We looked through the binoculars, and we didn't see a ball of light. We saw a diamond-shaped object that had a hollow center, that you could actually see trees and bushes through the center, like a doorway, if you will. Very kind of a scary moment for me for a second. I'm going, whoa, what are we experiencing here? And it was just after or before we had that kind of zone of fear thing. Now, Joplin, Missouri, that road, the Spook Light Road, is one hill after another. So this light was off the road. It kind of went down behind a hill very slowly, and it left behind where it had just been twinkling of little phosphorescent lights, like it was giving off something of its own. And I go, wow, what is that? And I asked everybody, I didn't say, this is what I saw. I'm tell me what you just saw, because they were all looking through binoculars too, and they saw the same thing. So now we're creeping up the hill, trying to get up to where this light is, because it's a gravel road. This light seems to have intelligence. It knows when people are infringing upon it, and it kind of just splits off or just disappears. Well, we were very quiet. We were the only one at the road about 3 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly, at less than 100 feet away, this light comes up over the hill and directly in front of us. Let me do this dramatically here. Directly in front of us, okay? And it's there. And we stopped the car. We didn't even have lights on because there was nobody on the road. It's a very, very rural road. And it sat there for a couple seconds, kind of twinkling, maybe, I don't know, size of maybe a basketball or a soccer ball, maybe a little bit larger. Again, went down behind the hill, leaving again that twinkling kind of firefly, kind of phosphorescent effect. We waited for a couple seconds. It didn't appear. We crept up top of the hill. When we crested the top of the hill, that light that was there just 30 seconds ago was at least 2 miles down the road. It had gotten from point A to point B, just like that. And then it disappeared.
Wow.
And if you go to my website, you can actually see I've taken video of this. I've taken some very phenomenal still pictures. And it was actually a picture that was taken by a Joplin Globe reporter named Martha Churchwell, who took some black and white photographs out there. She was doing a story. The first one came out just a big glow right there. It's you kind of see like a V of the trees, okay? And in the V of the trees, you kind of see this glow. But the next one shows a much smaller pinpoint of light, and then all of a sudden, with the time lapse, because the camera was kept open for maybe a couple seconds, you see the light literally split off. You see a splitting off effect of this light splitting off and going into the woods and disappearing. And she showed me, she gave me permission to use that on my site. I talked with her. I've been there several times since that time, and it's creepy. It's a creepy, creepy thing. So, sometimes you have, getting back to the kind of a long, drawn-out answer to your question, yeah, you can have residual and intelligence at the same time, but in some cases, we don't know if it's intelligent or residual. In the case of a spook light, what are we actually seeing? It's not a atmospheric phenomena. It's not ball lightning. It's not the will-o'-the-wisp. It's not foxfire. It's not phosgene. It's not ball lightning. It's not subterranean gas. I mean, it's not the car headlights and car taillights, because this light has been seen since 1886. There were no cars on the road in 1886.
Right. I know what you're talking about also with having high EMF in a room. I walked into a room once and all our meters went off. We had various meters, 2 or 3 different kinds of meters walking the room, because there was 4 or 5 of us. All of them went off, and you had this kind of a creepy feeling in your head, and I couldn't stay in there for more than a couple of minutes because it started giving me a headache. So we started trying to figure out what it was.
Yeah. And
we finally looked out the window. Less than a foot outside the window was 3 transformers on a pole. We were on the 2nd floor, so the windows were at the same height as these transformers. And fortunately, this was a storeroom. It's an active building, a used building. Fortunately, this is a storeroom that nobody goes in very often. And we were told that the employees of the place didn't like going in there. So there wasn't even that much storage, and there's basically just an unused room with clutter. And I can see why, because as you were saying, it causes you a nice headache in my experience. And several other people were starting, okay, this is not right, and they wanted to leave the room. And all it was just transformers.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize that's what, EMF, and that's what energies that are around all of us right now. I mean, we're being bombarded right now as we sit by radio, microwave, TV signals, gamma, cosmic, infrared, ultraviolet, the whole gamut. I mean, in very low, frequency, intensity, because otherwise we'd be burned to a crisp. But they're all around us. And as you get to higher levels, it does begin to affect us. And that's why these early meters were there to be bought very reasonably. So you could go around and you could check to see if your microwave was leaking, or which can basically fry you, or if you got a short, or if you got some high EMF and so forth. We investigated a case one year in McCook, Illinois. It was a private home, and the woman had all kinds of phenomena going on in her house. And as soon as we pulled up, the first thing I noticed is her house is directly underneath high tension wires. I mean, literally, directly above her are super high electrical towers, high energy. So we walked in there, and almost the whole time I was in there, I could feel my skin crawling. I could literally feel like, just going up and down, like little static charges all up and down my body. Now we went in there and we did some experimentation, and I wanted to kind of show people as we were doing some video to kind of show how different meters will pick up different things. So we had the 2 meters I showed people was an ordinary K2 meter and a tri-field natural EM meter. Now, the K2 meter is a good meter if that's all you can afford. I prefer not to use it for most investigations because it just picks up so much naturally occurring EMF that you really got to sort through and say, what am I picking up? Is it paranormal? Is it natural? Is it supernatural? So we turned both devices on in the kitchen, which seemed to be the focus of where a lot of the activity was taking place. The K2 was in the red the whole time, in the red. The tri-field natural EM meter did not make a single sound because the tri-field natural EM meter is not sensitive to external or internal AC fields. So therefore, you will never get a reading off of that. That's why, if people ask me what my favorite EMF device is, the tri-field natural EM meter, because you eliminate a lot of false readings inside of a home, and at the same time, what you do pick up, most likely, is probably paranormal, because that meter hardly ever goes off, and that's why you don't see a lot of these TV shows, paranormal TV shows, using that device because it never goes off. They prefer to use the tri-field 100XE or EX, I think it's called, which if you put it into a room that has a high concentration of naturally occurring fields, you'll actually see the meter going like this. Right. And it's throbbing with the same frequency as it's being put through those wires at the same time. So you can't use that device either.
Right. All right. We'll leave it there for just a minute. I got to go to commercial break. Got to sell stuff. You know how that goes.
Absolutely.
So, we'll be back, and I'll bring an intro back in, so you'll know when we get back started. All right. Let's black it out and sell some merch. Be back in about a minute.
Warning, the following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers and or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Rochester Winter Parafest is back, March 25th, 26th, and 27th of 2022. Come say hi to Naked and Afraid celebrities Melanie Elizabeth and Trent Nielsen, Haunted Case Files Jack Kenna, Monster Quest Steve Coles, and more. This event has it all: paranormal investigators, UFO researchers, Bigfoot researchers, and even photo opportunities for the kids with Buddy the Bigfoot. Oh, okay, adults too. Come on down and get a tattoo from Ink Master Tony DeVille. There are psychic gallery and individual readings, as well as radio personalities, authors, jewelry, makeup artists, and so much more. It's only $15 per person, and children under 10 are free. March 25th, 26th, and 27th of 2022. For more information, go to WLFE-DB.com. Yes, Winter Parafest is back. Valley Oak Event Center, Geneseo, New York, next to Denny's.
Alrighty, we're back with Dale Kasmerick. I was selling a merch, and by the way, while we're talking about selling merch, Dale, if you know of anybody who wants to advertise something, the two advertisements you just saw are network. I can put up what I want to. 2 hours, I can do what I want to as long as I'm not breaking any network rules. If you know somebody who wants to advertise an event, either in a public investigation or a Paracon, they can email me at crps@gmail.com, and I will, if they send me a 30-second video or less, I will be glad to play it during my commercial break. And right now, until I get a larger viewership, I'm not worried about charging anything. You can't really say, well, give me $1, maybe I'll reach a few people. I'll throw it up right now, just to have some advertising. Now, if we want to, once we get a lot of watchers of the show, if we want to renegotiate that, we can figure a price out then. But right now, if they just want to send me a 30-second or less commercial, I'll be glad to air it for them up until the time of, whenever their event is. As you saw, that event is not till springtime of next year. So we still got several months before that event even happens. So, if you know somebody, let me know. Or if anybody's listening, you got an event, I'll be glad to advertise it for you. Because that's what this show is about, is promoting what people are doing.
What's that email again?
CARK, SEARKPS @gmail.com. CARK stands for Southeast Arkansas Paranormal Society. Down here in this part of Arkansas, a lot of things. You got radio stations. Don't have any TV stations down here. We have a university that does some things. That is CARK this, CARK that. We got a hospital that kind of calls themselves CARK. Have a lot of programs that are called CARK. It just stands for Southeast Arkansas. And with the PS, I'm not interfering with anybody else's copyrighted name. And that's part of the name, CARKPS. SEARKPS, which stands for Paranormal Society, @gmail.com. All right, Dale, what is something recently that y'all have done? I have no idea. I've been down here in Arkansas 6 years now. The 1st of December was pretty much our moving day anniversary. And we came down here, believe us or not, our house wasn't, we didn't know about this house yet. We were living in a storefront.
Okay.
It is basically now rented. The building is rented out to a healthcare group for young people or women. I'm not sure exactly what they serve. I hadn't been back in there. But we were living literally in a storefront. We had put paper over the front windows because the front was where our bedroom was.
Okay.
And that's where we were living, and there was no heat. Well, there was a little bit of heat, but nowhere near enough to keep everything warm. In the back, when the main part of the building, which was just used for storage or construction, whatever you want to use it for, had no heat. And we spent some money putting it had the basics, but something was wrong with it. We had to get a guy to put some parts in. So we lived in New Orleans for about 2.5 weeks, came back on Christmas Eve, and realized we should have stayed in New Orleans for a couple of more nights because the heater that was working when we left had failed. Another part had failed. We called a guy. Guy came out there the day after Christmas, put the part in, didn't charge us all that much, and it was going. But we could have stayed in New Orleans at least 2 more nights. At least stay down there for Christmas. We down there for Christmas Eve. The city was beautifully decorated. We had a good time. We went to a local restaurant. He was actually giving out bells with ribbons with the year on it, wishing everybody a Merry Christmas. He was just a guy wanting his customers to have a good time. And my wife and I still remember that. And that was 6 years ago, this coming Christmas in a couple of weeks. So that's just where we were 6 years ago. What have you done the last 5 or 6 years up there? Because I've kind of lost track.
You ain't got enough left. You don't have enough time left of the show. Just to kind of give you an example of what we did this year alone. We did some local investigations. We have been focusing a lot of our attention into plane crash locations. As you know, the most famous one here in Chicago is Flight 191.
You're on TV tomorrow for that, right?
That's going to be coming on tomorrow at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time on the Travel Channel, called World's Most Unexplained. And excuse me, no, Flight 191 it's at 7 a.m. Sorry, I got those confused. 7 a.m. For that one, 11 a.m. for the White House ghost. So if you're not an early riser, you might want to set your DVR tonight. But we went there. We did an investigation very close to the crash site date. Tried to get permission to get on the crash site. We still can't get permission for some reason. I'm a very persistent individual. I'm not giving up that easy. So every year I call up and I try to get permission. We will eventually get on there. I can tell you that. But we also went to the Buddy Holly crash site this year in Clear Lake, Iowa. Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, Richie Valens, were all killed. As you know the story, they were heading to another concert, and they were in a small plane. It got iced on the wings, very, very bad conditions, and it crashed. And the very ironic part of that, and maybe people don't know the story, is that Waylon Jennings at the time was part of Buddy Holly's group. He was traveling with him, and they didn't have enough room for everybody to go in the plane, so they had a choice of going in the plane or a bus. So they flipped a coin, and Waylon Jennings lost. So Buddy Holly says something to Waylon Jennings like, "I hope you freeze on that damn bus." And Waylon Jennings says to Buddy Holly, "I hope the plane crashes." That's a true story, and it haunted Waylon Jennings until the day he died. We went there. We haven't even had a chance to even review the evidence yet because I got so much on my plate that this is when I catch up on all my stuff that I do for this year. I go into hibernation down here in my basement. My wife doesn't see me except for coming up a couple hours for dinner, trying to catch up on all this stuff. But we went to there. We also went down. If you're into country Western music, you probably recognize some of these names I'm going to file off here. Jim Reeves, his most famous song was "He'll Have to Go." If you ever heard that song, we were very close to his crash site. We weren't able to get directly on it because it's on private property. We also went to the Patsy Cline, Hawkshaw Hawkins, Randy Hughes, and Cowboy Copus's crash site in Camden, Tennessee, that we went to. And we also, there was one in Indiana called Flight 4184, which didn't have any celebrities. It was just a commercial American Airlines Eagle flight that again had problems with icing, problems in wings. And when inverted, basically crashed into the ground at probably, I don't know, 300 or 400 miles an hour. And it just disintegrated. It didn't even explode, it just disintegrated. And they didn't find hardly any bodies. So we went to a lot of those locations, but we took a big trip to Tennessee this year on beginning of July 10th, and we were there for 2 or 3 days. And we tried to get into a lot of places, but unfortunately, so many places are still kind of closed up because of the COVID. We wanted to get into the Bell Witch Cave, and we couldn't, so we kind of took pictures from the outside. We went to the Bell family cemetery called Bellwood Cemetery, which is in Adams, Tennessee, and also the original old Bell family cemetery, which is really between two farm fields right now. We were able to do something there as well. We went to Fort Donaldson, which is in Dover, Tennessee, and I'm a big Civil War buff, as you probably know. I've been to Gettysburg umpteen times, and I've been to a lot of battlefields and done a lot of investigations. We also went to we did some kind of like touristy trap type stuff because I was right in the neighborhood. I had to see Hurricane Mills where Loretta Lynn lived. And I'm glad we went because the very next year they had that massive flood that came through that really destroyed a lot of that picturesque neighborhood through there and all the little souvenir shops and everything. We were going to do some stuff in Nashville, including going to the Ryman Auditorium and Tootsie's and the Ernest Tubb record shop and the Lawrence record shop. And they're all supposed to be haunted, by the way. I learned a lesson that you can't just try to drive around downtown Nashville. You got to park somewhere and walk around. It's just too, it's just too congested. So we ended up eventually getting over.
Like New Orleans.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, absolutely. We eventually ended up doing something in and around the Carter House. The Carter House is in Franklin, Tennessee. Now, Franklin, Tennessee, for those that are in the Civil War, is a very devastating battle that took place between Major General John Bell Hood of the Army of Tennessee and General Schofield and part of General Thomas's Nashville corps that not too far from Spring City, I believe it's called. It's where I think they used to have at one time a Saturn plant down there. Of course, the Saturn plant's gone, I think. But anyway, this was a devastating battle in which that over and over again, John Bell Hood tried to charge into fortified breastworks, and breastworks are exactly what they sound. They come up to your breast. They're made of wood and rock and stone, and just high enough so you can pop over, shoot, duck down, load your weapon so you don't get shot, pop back up again, and they kept charging, and they just get mowed down. They lost 6,300 men in 4 hours. An incredible disaster, including I believe it was 5 or 6 Civil War Confederate generals were actually killed in that battle, including Patrick Cleburne, a very promising Confederate general, very, very well loved. And they were all laid out on the front porch of the Carton House. And the last time I was there, you could actually still see the bloodstains, in the wood. They have since that time, they painted over that, so you don't see the bloodstains anymore. I guess they were turning off regular tourists from going there. So we did a lot of that there. in Tennessee, and I'm still going over some of that stuff right now. I was able to meet with a couple of my friends that are Civil War reenactors down in that area that I had a great time with. Of course, we also, later on, we went to Gettysburg again this year. I'm going to be posting here something I think everybody will enjoy. It's just a matter of editing it and maybe adding some music to it. But I literally took everybody that came on the tour, the investigation with us from my group. And we also had some people from Ghost Head Soup. I don't know. I think you're familiar with people from Ghost Head Soup.
Yes,
they're a group up there in the Northwest side, Dean Thompson and many others. And they came along with us, including Sylvia Schultz, who's an author of many of the books from the Peoria State Hospital, Fractured Souls, Fractured Spirits. I wrote the foreword to her latest book, I think, Fractured Souls. And what we did is I literally stopped at literally almost every single stop along the way, and we videotaped everything. I say videotape, but it's not actually videotape anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's on SD cards. But basically on my 4K camera, so I had somebody filming me as I'm talking about that, showing pictures, and kind of laying out the battle and then all the ghost stories. So eventually I'm going to be posting all that up onto multiple YouTube videos that I'll eventually let everybody know when they're released. They'll be put up on my website as well, so you can get the links directly to it. And you'll be able to go from day 1 to day 4, which is actually the retreat, and be able to see. If you've never been to Gettysburg, this is a good opportunity for you to see pretty much almost every portion of the major battles that took place on Gettysburg. And we investigated the Little Round Top. We investigated Spangler Springs. We investigated the Reynolds Woods, where General Reynolds, the highest Union officer general, was killed during the Civil War. He was killed there. We investigated several Culp's Hill in that area. Every year that we go there, we try to investigate different places. In fact, we found some really obscure locations that I have never been to myself. And that's hard to believe since I've been there about 8 or 9 times. You can go there and you still find these little patches of battlefield that many people just don't realize the awfulness of the battle. I was able to get some actual Matthew Brady and Adam Gardner. I can't think of his first name, but Gardner and Brady were 2 Civil War photographers during the Civil War that you see all these bodies lying on the battlefields. They were taken mostly by these 2 people. And I was able to bring those along and to show, see this split rock right here? Here's what it looks like today, and here's what it looks like back in 1863 with all the bodies laying around.
Yeah.
And
I love when somebody does that.
That gives you, that makes you feel like you're really a part of it because you're actually seeing what it looked like back then and the devastation.
Oh, that is fantastic doing something like that. So this is something you're working on now?
Yeah, I'm working on that right. Well, as soon as I get done with all these things here for my trips and everything, hopefully I'll be able to start that maybe sometime, maybe in late January or early February, depending how fast I can go through these. I'm knocking out about 2 a day right now, and I'm still kind of backed up. But we went to a number of other places. We went to Conover Square. I don't know if you ever investigated Conover Square in Oregon, Illinois.
I did not get there.
Are you familiar with it? Though you've probably heard of it, though, right?
I'm halfway familiar with it. Yes, I've heard about it. Like I've never been there. So please continue.
Yeah, I mean, we were there, and we again, I haven't had a chance to go through that yet, but that's another building that we got some pretty interesting, what I believe to be direct responses using the Phasma box and using the obelisk. Not just random words coming through, it's actual responses to questions asked. And that's what really, it keeps me going when I get stuff like that, because you're not just getting random words coming through, you're actually getting responses to questions you're asking. You're saying, what's your favorite color, and blue comes through, or if you say, what's your name, and a name comes through. And I mean, just instantaneous responses that are coming through, which is amazing. We had a trip to Iowa this year too. The Buddy Holly was the first stop of that trip to Iowa, but we also ended up going to a place called Farrar School in Maxwell, Iowa, which I had been there once before, and we got a lot of stuff in the boiler rooms where we were feeling. I don't feel it that often, but I mean, I felt kind of, I almost want to say, a menacing type presence that was there. It didn't do anything to anybody, but it was just a strange, odd, weirdly kind of negative feeling inside there. And I can't wait to go through some of that evidence there. Now, we ended up at the Veliksa Axe House, and I know you've heard of that place in Veliksa. That's actually a true building where about 6 people were killed.
Right.
I think there was 4 from the family and 2 neighborhood children that were spending the night there. And apparently, this was the town and nobody ever locked their doors. They went to church. Apparently, this killer must have snuck in, hid in the attic, and waited for everybody to go to sleep. That's what they think, at least. And then he came out with an axe and began killing everybody, and apparently got away with it. They found the axe, but they never found the guy. This is before they had fingerprint technology, so they couldn't really narrow it down. There were some, possible suspects, but nothing that was ever concrete. And I've had a very unusual experience in there. Now, again, in all the places I've been to, I mean, I do have interactions occasionally. It's not like these TV shows that every week somebody's getting scratched, or every day somebody's getting pushed down the stairs. I was actually in the upstairs room, the upstairs bedroom where the children were staying. And I was up there. It's a very small building. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a very tiny building, a paper thin wall. So you really got to stick together when you do EVPs, because you get cross contamination. So I went up there and I just was videotaping with my 4K camera. Asking, kind of questions, and just seeing if anything showed up. And all of a sudden I got tapped on my back. And of course I spun around. Of course, there's nothing behind me, obviously. I didn't expect there to be anything behind me. And I know we had the opportunity to spend the night in the building, but because I have sleep apnea and I have a CPAP machine, I figured I'd be keeping everybody awake. So I figured I'd just go back to a motel. Several people from our group did stay overnight in the building. They had slept on cots or sleeping bags they brought in. And they said they heard movements upstairs. They heard a loud bang in the middle of the night. And what could have sounded like maybe footsteps or something like that. Which was kind of interesting, and they were all coming from upstairs, nothing on the main floor. So that was pretty cool. They have a resident cat that kind of roams the whole neighborhood, and it got in there. But I mean, how cats, when they walk, you can't even hear them. Their feet are padded, so I'm sure that's not what they were hearing. And it was a very friendly cat. It kind of curled up, by somebody's sleeping bag when it was nice and warm, so it wasn't that cat walking around. Let's see, just trying to think of what else we had here. Besides the Gettysburg, we went up to Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and we actually investigated what's called the Beast of Bray Road, which is a cryptid. And it's a little bit different for me, but I'm interested in all that kind of stuff. I'm interested in UFOs and cryptids, Bigfoot, but my forte is really ghosts and hauntings and poltergeist phenomena. But we went there, and we got permission to be on the property, which the owner owns that whole area around Bray Road, the farm, and he gave us permission to be out there all night. We wanted to camp out there, which is really cool. And I'll tell you, Len, something happened that we can't explain. We may have actually captured this cryptid on a thermal camera. We had taken the tour And what it was actually like an old hayride. The guy put us on the back of something he was pulling along that had hay barrels, and he kind of stopped here and he showed us all around. So he kind of gave us an idea of where to look later on. And we were up by the barn, and I was kind of just shining I don't have a flare, but I have a thermal tablet, which uses this, what they call the SEEK technology. And it works just like a regular flare. It's maybe not quite as accurate, but it still gives you indications of different variants of degrees of heat.
Right.
And suddenly I saw something near the edge of the cornfield, and there was nobody standing there. It was only three of us. Two people from a podcast called The Insane Asylum, Mark and Joe, and myself, and that was it. The owner was sound asleep in a home, so he was not out there, and it wasn't a real person, because from where we were standing to the edge of the cornfield was maybe 50 feet, and it was almost a full moon, so we could see if there was somebody walking there, and there was nobody walking there. Yet there was a figure of a person or something. I say person because it had a kind of a humanoid, configuration,
right?
And it was standing up on two legs. It was a bipedal type sighting. Now, not only did I take several pictures, but I took some video, and it actually shows this thing moving a little bit. Now, I am very careful with all my evidence, and I make backups and backups to backups to backups because I don't want to lose anything. And to this day, I can't find that footage. I can't find it anywhere. And that's very unlike me. I mean, it was either on the SD card, or it would have been in the hard drive of that thermal tablet. And I may have just dumped it into a wrong folder, and I may find it here eventually. I'm not to the point where I have to review that yet. But I know what we saw, and I played it back to the people that were there immediately. And I said, "You see what I'm picking up?" And he said, "Oh yeah, wow, what is that?" And they shined a flashlight over, and there's nothing there. So I don't know what we picked up. Was it the Beast of Bray Road? It was surely something that was invisible, basically to your normal sight and even to infrared, but it wasn't invisible to thermal. It picked up on the thermal, and it was showing a heat signature. So how do you explain that? I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I know you did a lot with thermal yourself, and you've done a lot of full spectrum. I mean, I've always, and this is, I may be going off on the wrong end, and help me if you think I am, but normally when you're photographing or you're using a thermal, and by the way, thermal sometimes is way overrated, because what a thermal camera does, it won't pick up cold spot. It's a contact reading. It comes in contact with something, a wall, a person, a body, or something. Now, normally when you're doing that and using that for ghost research, ghost investigations, you're looking typically for cold spots. I don't know too many ghosts that show up as a heat signature, okay? When they're a heat signature, they're most likely a real person, an animal, or something else, okay? What we saw on thermal was not cold, but was hot. And this cryptid has actually been, it's on numerous television shows, numerous documentaries. In fact, I had just seen a documentary about 2 months before we went out there on the Travel Channel. And if you're interested, I could send you a copy of that show. It's not that long. I could pop it somewhere if you got a Dropbox or something. But the interesting thing about this is that the owner was out there, and he saw some really strange footprints in the snow. It had snow. It was like 3 foot of snow or something in the middle of his field, and he sees footprints that he didn't recognize. And being that he's kind of a woodsman himself and a hunter, He knows what a deer is, what a bear is, and what a fox is, and all this. I mean, he's looking. He goes, I don't recognize what that looks like. But then they suddenly stop in the middle of the field. They don't trail off into the woods. They walk to the center of the field, and the footprints stop. So where did this thing go?
I have a theory about that. Did UFO
come down and grab it? Did it walk into a portal? I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's a theory that I've talked to other people before about. That no, I'm not that familiar with cryptids. That's not my thing. But one theory that I happen to kind of like, I'm not sure if it's true or not, and other people have come up with, is that a lot of your cryptids, especially your mainstay, your Bigfoot, is an interdimensional being. And it's hard to pick it up on camera. When you pick it up on a camera, the picture is going to be blurry because it's not fully solid. It's something that's half in our dimension and half not. And while it's maybe maybe it's 3/4 of our dimension, it leaves a few footprints that started from nothing. You're going down a trail, all of a sudden you see 2 or 3 footprints and it's gone. Was it in our dimension for maybe a second or two, a step or two, and goes back to where they belong? That's just a theory that I've heard and happens to fit the evidence. But there's no real proof. You can't prove any of this. But
No. I mean, but I've talked to other people, other Bigfoot researchers. They had a show on the Travel Channel called Finding Bigfoot with Matt Moneyman and Bobo, and I used to watch that. I used to get a kick out of that. They just believe that this animal is actually a physical being. Okay, that's their premise. That they've heard the idea of it being interdimensional. They kind of disregard that. Now that's fine. I mean, that's your theory. That's the way you want to set your course. It's fine.
Right.
But if you look at some of the other reports where people have actually, like you said, you'll see footprints and they suddenly stop. Was that where the footprints stopped? Is that where they entered back into that other dimension? Was that where the doorway was right there? Or did, like I see, a UFO suddenly drop out of the sky and pick them up? Because I did a lecture a couple of years ago called Portal Hauntings, which I kind of showed what I believe, and I'm going to have Portal Hauntings too, by the way, but this was the first one, where I came across what I believe to be portals. Bachelor's Grove being one of them. So many different reports of all types of activity. The Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Also, Dudleytown in Connecticut. The Jersey Devil type things, sightings up there in Jersey, and there's several others, and all these seem to come by the idea, especially when you get to the there was back in, I think it was June of 1966 in Michigan, not too far. It was out of a suburb of Detroit. There were reports of what they used to call the UFO flap, which that means a ton of sightings taking place within a short period of time. Now, not only did that happen at the same time, but people began to see Bigfoot, ghost, poltergeist activity, and all different types of other paranormal occurrences, as though some door just opened up and let everything come in for a while and kind of wreak havoc on our physical world. And then almost as quickly as it started, it stopped. And it stopped almost instantaneously. And I mean by that, everything stopped. The hauntings, the poltergeist, the Bigfoot, the UFO, all that seemed to stop within the same week. Now, how do you explain all that? The way I explain it is portals. That there are times that there are I believe that there could be very well parallel universes. There could be universes that, in some cases, this is kind of be an esoterical term, that the veil is so thin between the two worlds that sometimes that little membrane is kind of ruptured and it allows things to go in and out on either side. And if these things are parallel dimensions or alternate universes, this is really getting far-fetched stuff. If there is a science says there's always a balance of power. So if you have pluses, you also have minuses.
Right.
You have matter and you have antimatter. Now, what happens when matter and antimatter meet? They obliterate one another in a tremendous amount of energy. Now, heaven forbid something comes into our universe, which is a positive and touches a negative. I mean, that could be the end of our civilization. I mean, putting it a bit, far-fetched. But I mean, there are scientists that go into quantum physics and that go into these ideas about that type of phenomena. I just thought it was a great thing to finally do my first kind of like cryptid sighting investigation. And I have to find that video because I think that video is going to be pretty compelling if I can find it. And I'm sure it's around here somewhere. But we have done quite a bit of stuff in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, we went all over the place. Last year we went not only to Gettysburg again, but we also went to Pennhurst Asylum, which I've always wanted to do. And Pennhurst was just an awesome place. We were using a kind of an application that I call Paratech, and it's an application that you can buy, you can get for free. It's a word database basically, and you ask a question, and then it's scanning, and a word will pop up, and sometimes it'll answer your question, but most times it doesn't. And we had talked to this one gentleman who was a guide. He had taken us through the buildings into these underground tunnels. And there are tunnels that link to different buildings. And underneath the Philadelphia Hall, Philadelphia building, there's a shorter little, I don't know, maybe 100 and 150 foot tunnel. That's about it. And a dead end, so you have to walk back out. And he said he went down there one day, and by himself, he was just checking to make sure everybody was off the property before they locked the gates. And he was shining his flashlight around, so didn't see anybody. And as he's walking out, he hears a disembodied voice says, "Get out." And he did. He went out there pretty quick. He didn't expect it. So he told me this story, and he told us this story. So we went down there, and several people from my group, this was last year, so this was kind of during the pandemic, so we all had masks on and everything. Even though we were outdoors, we were just being safe. And we went down there, and one of the last things, we had the Paratech going. We weren't really getting too much of a response, but all of a sudden, the Paratech says, "Get out." And you can actually see it on, because it shows the words on the screen. And so I videotaped it right away. And I said, "You see what it just said? Get out." The same thing that told that guy to get out. So to me, that was pretty awesome that happened right there. We went to Iron Island Museum. We went to Buffalo, New York. We did some investigating and around there. We've been to, not that long ago, we went to St. Albans Sanitarium and all the Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. And the Lake Shawnee Amusement Park was really cool. It was the first haunted amusement park I've ever been into. And unfortunately, I wish we would have had more time because there were many places on that property that was once owned by the Shawnee Indians. That's why it's called Lake Shawnee, but it's also happened to be a lake called Lake Shawnee, named after the Shawnees too. There was also a massacre of some settlers on the property who actually kidnapped his young daughter, and they went out after trying to figure out where this daughter was, and they eventually found her, and she was dead. And They tried to find the perpetrators, and they couldn't tell who might have did this. But we had a good time there. We did some other investigating of some other battlefields that we went into as well. So yeah, I mean, we've been very busy now. For what we're planning on doing this year, hopefully, and just very quickly, is we've got a couple of places that we're really kind of focusing on this year, including going down possibly to Alabama to look at areas around Decatur, Huntsville, Russellville, Cloverdale, which has a spook light associated with it. One of the books that my publishing company, it's called the Mysterious Cloverdale, Alabama Spook Light Mystery, and the author is going to meet us down there with a scientific crew, which will be cool, and we'll have some other scientific gear that will be out there with as well. Hope to get into Shiloh Battlefield. Hopefully come down past Tennessee on the way down maybe and see if the Bell Witch Cave is going to be open, because I still want to do that as well. And I know one of these days we're going to get down to your neck of the woods here, because I mean, we're all over the board, and we're pretty close to where you're located. And we had talked about doing something into the Deep South one year. I don't know if we're going to do it next year. I'd like to try it, maybe get down to South Carolina, to Georgia. There's a lot of places, Andersonville Prison down in Georgia, which is a Civil War prison. Very, very, it's got to be haunted. So many people died there.
It is. Take my word for it. It is.
Yeah.
If you go down there and you know yourself, I was down there with absolutely no equipment, and there's several areas where they've got it kind of marked out. You kind of know where you are in the old Andersonville camp, and some of it is really, really creepy. Not because you know exactly what happened here. Maybe you just said this was part of the encampment, where people slept or something, whatever. They don't tell you this number of people died right here or whatever. They don't do that. They've touched very little on any kind of paranormal stuff. But you can just go down there daytime or evening, and some of the areas are really, really creepy. So if you get a chance, go down to Andersonville. Now, I'll tell you one other place you can go to, either during a Georgia investigation or during your Alabama investigation. My hometown, Columbus, Georgia, is right there on what we call the west coast of Georgia, on the Chattahoochee River. If you can contact, because this is the group that does most of the investigation in Columbus, I believe it's called the Phoenix City Paranormal Society, Paranormal Club, whatever they're calling it, or Russell County, but I think it's called the Phoenix City Paranormal Group. And contact them about going into the Confederate Naval Museum in Columbus. At least maybe you can go during the weekday when they're open, and just go. They let you go in there. They just said, okay, here it is. Here's a guide. Have at it. And they will let you just walk through, and they don't know what kind of camera you're using. I went through the Geist House, and there in Chicago, they don't allow paranormal tours, but I took the tour with a full spectrum camera. At least you could do that.
Yeah.
But contact them. Maybe you can sweet talk them and let you come in there at night, especially if you went through the Phoenix City group, because they have been allowed in there at night. That place is definitely haunted, because I was in there by myself just before I left Columbus and moved to Chicago back in summer of 2001. And they had a video of what it was like to be on a river ironclad during the Civil War. And they showed it in combat, and they also showed it being hit by, of course, they called them back then torpedoes, which we know called now a mine.
Right.
And the explosion came up, and it was sinking. There was an abandoned ship, and they were kind of showing a little video of, everybody jumping around trying to get off. Because you don't want to be on an ironclad when it's sinking. That's a pretty quick thing. You got to get off. And I realized I was in there watching this movie with somebody else. and they weren't dressed that well. And I made a comment before I was leaving. I told the one or two ladies that was there. I said, I'm about to leave. I guess you can lock the door. She said, yeah, because it's time for us to lock up. I knew what time of day it was. And I said, but there's one other person in the back. I said, they weren't dressed all that well, but I didn't pay much attention to that. I don't care what they're dressed like. I said, but you might want to look for them. They're in the back somewhere. And she said, nobody's walked in the door since you walked in.
Yeah.
You've been here by yourself the whole time. Nobody's came out because nobody was here when you got here, and nobody came in while you were here. You've been here by yourself. I said, well, who did I watch the movie with?
Yeah.
I don't know, but there was nobody here but you. We weren't in there. We didn't watch that video. It plays all day long, nonstop. Of course, they've seen it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But somebody was in there watching that movie with me. And so if you can talk to either the Phoenix City Paranormal Group or talk to the Columbus Confederate Naval Museum there in Columbus, right on the Riverwalk, beautiful park. You can go up and down the Riverwalk. There's several locations along that Riverwalk where things have happened. You go right down to the docks. And if you get a chance, try to go there. And it's right there next to Alabama. So if you're over there anywhere near Russell County, which is right across the river from Columbus, if you're anywhere close to that county, see if you can slip into Columbus and at least catch the Confederate Naval Museum.
Yeah, I know there was some other places that we were looking at to do when we were in Georgia. There's a ghost light in Screven, Georgia, that I'd like to try to investigate. Of course, I'd like to see Atlanta and Savannah. They were both very instrumental during the Civil War in Sherman's March to the Sea in 1864. That's literally just, they burned everything from between Atlanta to Savannah. And of course, in South Carolina, there's Fort Sumter, and that's where the Civil War started. And of course, I'd like to see that. I saw where the Civil War ended in Appomattox Courthouse, but I've never been to Fort Sumter yet. So I know there's a gentleman that I know that runs a group called the Georgia Ghost Group called Bob Honeycutt that offered to take us around some places too as well. So I'd like to kind of try to coordinate that with him. Then we're also looking at, I don't know if we're going to be able to do all this next year, but there's been talk for a couple of years about going out to do a California trip to try to see the Queen Mary, the Whaley House, Preston Castle, places in Southern California, which I was there in 1987. But I didn't have a chance to go to a lot of those places. Unfortunately, I was only there for a couple of days. And then there's even been talk about going back to England, which would be a major trip, obviously. I have a friend of mine from the group. He's my special correspondent in the UK. His name is Paul Adams, and he's going to be coming into Chicago in April, late April, I think, or mid-April, for me to show him around and do stuff together with him. He's going to stay at my house for those 2 weeks. I told him I have spare bedrooms. Why waste the hotel room? And I said, if I get a chance to come to UK, you're going to show me around too. And he said, oh, absolutely. You can stay at my place too. So I got an open invitation for that. And but trying to talk some other people to doing that. In fact, there was a tour when I was in Louisville, Kentucky for this convention. There was and I met her before someplace else that runs these, what they call mystical tours or mystical ghost tours. And this one gentleman, Mike Rickester, I could never pronounce his name, but he was doing an Ireland ghost trip. And I really wanted to go to that because it sounded pretty interesting. But when I got to Louisville, she said it was only like one seat left. It was just somebody. It was just posted about a week ago, and it's already almost sold out. I go, well, I guess I ain't going to be able to do that. But what I would probably just like to do is just kind of spend maybe 2 weeks, maybe at least 10 days, and just go wherever I want to go, and just see whatever I want to see. Because when I was there in '85 and then in '88, I didn't bring any equipment. back in 85 and 87, 88, there really was no paranormal gear out there yet.
No.
I mean, just a few pieces of equipment here and there, like, maybe K2s or stuff like that, or maybe some very rudimentary stuff. But, I mean, when I went there, I was using a 35 millimeter camera. There was no digital. There was no night shot cameras. There was cassette tape recorders. There was no digital tape recorders. So that's why I really wanted to go back to try to go to some of these places like, the Tower of London, to, Stonehenge, and visit that again, and take one of those tours that actually allows you to go into the stones. Because when I was there, they had it kind of like roped off with a chain, and you couldn't go beyond the chain. There was a walkway all the way around it. So you got fairly close to the stones, but not really close. I know there are certain tours that you can go through the concierge of your hotel. They have certain tours that actually take you in, and you're actually allowed to go in there into the stones. And they say that people actually feel kind of a power or an energy, if you will, kind of coming off these stones. And I really would like to try to see if I could register that with some of the equipment that I have. Or, of course, I wouldn't be able to bring a lot of equipment going over to the UK, because they'd be looking through my suitcase, and they probably think I was a terrorist with all the batteries and everything. They probably think I got a bomb in my suitcase, and it's just paranormal gear.
You go over there with everything, packing pretty heavy, and we'll probably see about it on CNN.
Yeah. You'll probably see me in a jail over there somewhere, looking between the bars,
or at least in an interrogation room, at the very least. All right, well, we're getting toward the end of the show, and this is something I did not have it written down, and we did not cover that in what I'm calling now the practice show that you and I did. But I have a few questions here.
Sure.
It's kind of a side question. There are no wrong answers. So you can tell me to stick that question where the sun doesn't shine, and that's considered an answer.
Okay.
So whatever you want to answer this question, the first thing that comes out, that's your answer. Okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
But this is some things the world wants to know. Like, question 1. What is your favorite sandwich?
Roast beef.
Okay.
I guess.
Related question. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
It's meats in a bun. Does pineapple belong? Yeah, that was a question. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yeah. No, I would say no. Only because I think a hamburger is more like a sandwich, actually. Really.
Yes. Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think so, but
yeah,
whatever
I've had it before. I mean, I wouldn't eat it all the time, but I've had it, pineapple pizza. It's not crazy about it.
Okay. Now here's one that goes home to me, because I fix all 3 of these, by the way. Barbecue sandwich: pork, beef, or chicken?
Pork.
Now, here's what I kind of know which way you're going to answer this one, because Gail, my wife, being born and raised Chicago, has her definite answer. I lived there for 14 years. I have my answer, so I know probably where you're going with this one. Pizza, flat, or deep dish?
Flat.
Oh, you like flat?
Yeah, I actually personally prefer deep dish, but I got a second half upstairs called my wife, and when I order a pizza, she doesn't care so much for the deep dish. She likes the thin and crispy. But I like them both.
Okay. Yeah, down here, kind of stuck with the flat. I have not tasted a very good frozen deep dish yet. So Gail and I both missed. I'll drop a name here. I don't usually do that. Giordano's deep dish.
Giordano's, yeah.
Okay, next questions. What is the scariest animal to you? marine, land, whatever. What's the scariest animal to you?
Scariest animal would be the squid.
The squid. Okay. Nightmares about squid, huh?
Yeah, no nightmares, but I think it's pretty scary. They got that big giant beak.
Yes.
Actually, a beak. They just pull off, and they're very hard to find. They don't see them because they dive very deep. I don't think there's ever been a live specimen actually ever been brought out of an ocean because they dive so deep. Yeah.
Apples or oranges?
Apples.
Apples. Okay. Getting the light on this one. Here's one related to what you and I do. What do you think happens when we die?
I think we end up that's a really good question. I mean, that's how I got involved here to begin with, was trying to figure out what lies beyond death's door. But I mean, if I was coming back from my Catholic background, I'd say we go to heaven, okay, or hell, or purgatory, which is like in between, which is where I think spirits reside now, anyway. But I think it might.
Protestants don't believe in.
Yeah, but I think it might be more of our energies. Maybe, I don't know. Wow, that's really esoteric.
Yeah, that's really deep, isn't it?
Yeah, it is kind of deep.
We could move on. Yeah,
go ahead.
We could call that an answer. Just saying we're studying that.
Yeah. Okay.
Favorite action movie.
So say that again.
Favorite action movie.
Favorite action movie. Jason Bourne.
Okay. Favorite horror movie.
Horror or ghost movie? Horror movie, you're saying, right?
Horror movie. Horror movie.
Dracula.
Good answer. Exercise, worth it?
Definitely. If I would stand up, you'd see why I'd say yeah.
What's your favorite exercise?
Walking.
Yeah.
Walking.
Walking. Okay.
Walking. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite paranormal show, or just you don't watch any of them?
I hate to give anybody credit about that too. I would probably say that I don't know. Well, let's go back to when shows used to be shows. I would say my favorite paranormal show was Sightings.
Okay, that's a perfectly legitimate answer, because that's a legitimate show.
Yeah.
Okay, another one. Water, flat or sparkling?
What? Glass?
Water. No, water, flat.
Oh, water.
Yeah, regular tap water, or sparkling, like you get in a fancy bottled water.
Regular water.
What's your favorite phone app?
Favorite phone app? Well, it's not really a phone app. Well, I would say I really don't have one, to tell you the truth.
Okay. Can you describe the rest of your life in 5 words?
Yeah. Continued trekking to find the truth.
There you go. 2 more. Do you like rice? This is a very Arkansas question, because Arkansas is the #1 producer of rice in the United States. We export rice to China, or at least we did before we got the tariff argument with them. There's a lot of within several miles of where I'm sitting. There are acres and acres of rice fields. I could almost walk to a rice field from here. So,
Okay.
Do you like rice? And what's your favorite way to eat it?
Yes, I like rice, and I would say fried rice.
Okay. Now, the one question the world has been waiting for all your life. Extremely important question. Underwear, boxers, or briefs?
Boxers. I mean briefs. I'm
Boxers.
sorry, briefs.
Briefs.
No, not briefs. I got them confused.
Briefs.
Briefs. Yeah, I like briefs.
I wear the combos. The boxer briefs, with the slash in between them. Uh-oh. Dale froze up. Huh. Dale, if you can hear me, it's time for me to end the show. Anyway, it's 9:01. Dale, it's been great having you. Been great listening to everything you've had to say, and congrats to you for answering my rather silly questions there at the end, and just trying to bring a little humor into the show. And I got to get out of here because we got another show coming up on this network. So let me get out. And Dale, we will be talking to you later. And whoops, he's completely gone. And let me get out of here. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you next week. I will be having a new guest. I don't know too much about it. I've got to study them about what's going on with them, but it involves paranormal, definitely, and involves motorcycles. So, all right. See you next week. Same time, same place. 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern Time through 10, 2-hour show. We discuss the paranormal here on Southern Fry Paranormal. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for watching our show. Be sure to tune in to next week as once again we journey way down south into Bayou Country for another heaping portion of Southern Fried Paranormal with Len Dorman and Bones. Make sure to like, share, and follow. Y'all come back now. You hear?